The title of this presentation is pasture harvest still the key profit driver? But first I want to talk a little about how bright the future is for dairy farming. We've all had to contend with COVID and other challenges over the last couple of years, and it's easy to lose sight of the brilliant big picture. So firstly, international milk demand is forecast to continue to grow over the next 30 years and outstrip supply. This graph from the highly respected IFCN shows that there will be a milk deficit in the future. The only question is, where will the milk come from to fill this deficit? The second point is that there is no chance that milk substitutes are going to significantly impact on the demand for milk. Why? Because the nutrients required for humans to survive and thrive cannot be delivered from plants alone, as this graph from Professor Hill and his team highlight, where 1 means 100% of the required nutrients are being delivered. Plants just don't cut the mustard. But if we add in the nutrients delivered from dairy products in light brown and from all other animal products in red, then we can supply all the nutrients humans require. And thirdly, with all the concern about climate change, there is every likelihood that dairying can minimise its environmental impact in the future, particularly for pasture-based dairy farmers. This graph is from a study undertaken by Ag Research on behalf of Dairy NZ. As you can see, New Zealand dairy farmers have the smallest carbon footprint of all the countries analysed, with another pasture-based country, Uruguay, having the next lowest impact. Although there are a lot of factors to consider with carbon footprint, some principles are clear. 1, pasture-based production systems will be better off. 2, utilising perennial pasture or perennial crops will be best. And 3, production systems utilising a high percentage of pasture in the diet will be best. So we should all be immensely excited about the future of the international dairy industry, especially the pasture-based component due to its comparatively low cost of production. But what about South Africa and you individually, as farmers need to be consistently profitable? The question was, is pasture harvest still the key profit driver? And the answer, yes, of course it is, just as it will continue to be for as long as we can see into the future. This table lists the primary operational ratios that strongly correlate with profit. And as you can see, pasture harvest tops the list, and by a wide margin. This table is from one of my own published papers, though pasture harvest tops the list in all other refereed papers of which I'm aware. And the ratio that has the next highest correlation is pasture cost per tonne dry matter, which is positively impacted by pasture harvest. So why does pasture harvest strongly correlate with profit? Well, it's because pasture is the lowest cost feed available for cows, and it is the lowest by a huge margin. This table compares the cost of pasture to the cost of concentrate and forage for 7 countries in US dollars. Just as with all the other countries, South Africa's pasture cost is cheaper than concentrate and forage. Compared to pasture, concentrate is almost 4 times the cost, 275% more expensive. There is not a nutritionist in the world that can close even 20% of that gap. As most of you will be aware, an improvement in pasture harvest on farm has been the major change that has occurred in the South African dairy industry over the last 20 years. This is confirmed in this graph, which compares South Africa to 6 other countries. For the period from around 2000 through to 2014, progress in improving pasture harvest by farmers has been spectacular. These improvements in pasture harvest were largely mirrored by improvements in farm profit, as this graph of return on capital highlights. The improvements in profit are not so consistent, as factors such as annual changes in milk price and national milk production confound the underlying trend. This graph includes trend lines to plot changes in profit for all the countries, which further highlights how profit in South Africa improved through to around 2014 on the back of improvements in pasture harvest. So yes, pasture harvest is and will remain the key driver of profit on all pasture-based dairy farms. But since 2014, improvements in pasture harvest have largely stalled, with any future improvements likely to be small and little different to improvements in most other countries. And dairy farm profit in South Africa appears to have begun to erode. This is a salient reminder that although pasture harvest is the key profit driver, it is certainly not the only one. And we'll look at what is behind the latest trends and much more in my roadshow presentations and some further short videos.